Hi, this is Ewan Smith for AE Tuts, and today I'm going to show you a tip for creating heat distortion effects. It's quite common when you're creating these kind of effects to use fractal noise to drive it, but in this case we're going to use a particle system. First thing I need to do is create a new comp. It's a 720p comp running for 20 seconds, and I'll call it particles. Within this new comp I want to create a solid. Just a standard black solid here. And I'm going to rename that red particles for reasons which will become clear. Now let's select this layer and add Effect, Simulation, CC Particle Systems 2. Now because we're at 0 on the timeline you won't see much happening here, but if I move it down a little bit we can see our particle system. The effect we want to create is of particles actually rising from the bottom of the frame to the top, so we'll have to make a few adjustments here. First thing I want to do is increase the birth rate. Let's take that up to about 8. And also we want the particles to last a little bit longer as well, so we'll make that 8 seconds. And then to producer, and take the position right down to the bottom of the screen. And in fact a little bit off the bottom. And we also want quite a wide radius on this, so I'll move that up to 1000 pixels. Then in physics, I want the animation to be directional. And gravity to be negative, let's say negative 0.3, which means everything rises up, and we can drop the velocity to 0. And the particle type itself, we want a faded sphere, and the birth size to be 1.25, so nice and big. Death size, let's bring that right down to 0.05, so the particles shrink as they approach the top of the screen. And we want the birth color to be bright red. So let's just say pure red, FF0000. And death color, take that to black. So if we do a RAM preview of that, we have the effect of particles rising to the top of the screen. I want to create quite a diffuse effect here, so I'm actually going to add a new adjustment layer and then add a blur effect to that. Fast blur will do, and let's say 10 pixels. If we go back to our original comp, which has the image of the desert road in it, and bring in our particle comp, and then because we can see nothing at the moment, let's just shift that down the timeline a little bit so we've actually got some particles happening. And we'll bring in the length of the comp to suit. Now to create the heat haze distortion, go to layer and create a new adjustment layer. We'll call that effects for just now. And then to effect, distort, displacement map. To set this up, we set our displacement map layer to the particles layer. And this is the reason we created some red particles, because we only want to distort things horizontally. Let's set the horizontal distortion to 10. And a quick RAM preview. And you can see a heat haze shimmer starting to appear. To sell the effect a bit more, we can add a bit of color correction. So I select my effects layer again. And then add color correction curves. We can add a little more contrast. and also go into the red channel and just push that up a little bit. The next stage is to create the shimmering reflection effect you see on roads on hot days. Take the desert image, duplicate the layer with Control D, then hit S to bring up scale, unlink the constrained proportions and set the second parameter to -100, which will flip your image upside down. Let's lock that back up and hit T on the keyboard and drop the opacity down to about 20%. Let's zoom in a bit on the road, maybe a bit more, and then grab the pen tool and just draw some very thin lines to create masks, just about the width of the road. Maybe 3 in total. And bring the opacity back up to 100% so we can see what we've created, and then zoom back out. So we now have our reflection content and we have to make it look like it's shimmering. So if you select the desert layer, MM, to bring up all the mask properties we've just created, then select mask expansion and alt click it, and then we'll add an expression, wiggle 1, 2. This will add a little bit of random resizing on the mask. If we do the same again, alt click on mask 2, wiggle again, but this time we'll change it slightly, so let's say 1.2. This is the amount of times it wiggles per second, and 2.3, so it doesn't look too uniform. And again, the last one, alt click, and we'll say wiggle 1.8, 1.9. These are completely random values. Let's RAM preview that to see what we have. And that's looking okay. It's really just a case of altering it to your own taste. For a last touch of desert heat, let's just collapse this layer here and create a new solid. And we'll call that sun. Go to effect, generate lens flare, and let's go for a 105mm prime. Make a little bit of room here so we can see what we're doing. Take the flare sensor, just move it off screen. Set the layer blending mode to screen. And then if we go into flare brightness, and just as before, we'll add a little bit of wiggle. Alt, click on the stopwatch. And let's say wiggle every couple of seconds, and 15 for strength. And another RAM preview, just to see how that looks. And there you have your shimmering road desert scene. One of the advantages of using particles to drive the distortion rather than a fractal noise layer is that it's actually directional. So you can use the same effect to create jet engine exhausts or heat ray blasts, anything like that, anything where you want control over the direction of the distortion, the particle system's a really good way to go. I hope you find it useful, and I'll see you on the next one.